It's about 1:30 in the morning, and my wife and we live in a 2-story apartment complex, and we're playing some, first-person shooter video games, drinking some libation, and we have 4 cats, and we love our cats. I know that people would like to say that they're your dog lover or cat lover. I love animals, but I love my cats a lot. I'm not afraid to say that. We got Tony and Stripey and Bear, and we also have one called 50-50. But and to be completely honest with you, out of all the cats, and I do love them all, Tony is one of the cats. He's a nondescript black and white cat. Looks kind of like Sylvester. I like him, but I don't love him. He's a little more aloof and standoffish than the rest of the cat. But my little girl just adores this cat. And I hear from this field that it's an empty field. My daughter calls it the Garfield. It's very cute. I hear this cacophony of coyotes, not just yipping and yowling and howling, but they're just screeching and going completely insane. They were doing something that I hadn't heard before. And in the midst of that, I hear this horrible shriek of agony from a cat. And if you've ever heard a cat having sex or fighting, those are 2 frightening sounds in and of themselves. They sound like a cat might be in agony. This was well beyond that. This was something that I knew right now a cat is experiencing a rendering. I do what, in retrospect, is not the smartest thing to do at that point, but I know I have to get these cats out of there. So I go to our 2nd-story window, and I stick my head out, and I start screaming at the top of my lungs, "I'll effing kill you. I scream it. I will effing kill you." And I meant it, too. It wasn't just me screaming. I was completely serious. And the coyotes scatter. They're not there anymore. My wife and I run downstairs, and unfortunately at that point I woken up my little girl. Hopefully she didn't hear what I was saying, but she's, "What's the matter, Daddy? What's the matter?" And I said, "I heard a cat get hurt by coyotes. I'm hoping it's not ours, but you need to stay here." So, okay.
Right. And she does.
She does. So I get my 10 million candle watt spotlight, which is an obscene power for a spotlight. It's about the size of a bread basket, literally. It's absolutely huge. So we run to the gate, where it's a wall that I'm 6'6", so I'm able to look over it like most people can. I'm holding this spotlight, and I see laying out in the field a cat. I cannot see what cat it is, but almost instantly my worst fears are realized. So I run back in the house, and perhaps make my first blunder, which is getting my very realistic air pellet gun and put it in my waistband, because I think the last thing I need out there is a herd of coyotes to surround me and start.
I'm sorry, the pellet gun is realistic. Realistic? Why?
It looks exactly like a pistol. So I go downstairs and
beautiful.
I get in the car. My wife, I call her T. We get in the car, we drive out, and we only have to drive about 50 feet outside of our gated community.
Right.
We park the car, and I tell her, "Please stay here." So I walk out in the field, I make my wife stay there, "Please stay here." And I walk out, and there, to my dismay, stretched out in a completely mangled state, barely recognizable at all, is our cat, Tony. And I'm like, "Oh, geez, oh, man."
This is the one you kind of don't like.
This is the one I kind of don't like, but my daughter absolutely adores. And unfortunately, I don't know how his metabolism was able to maintain an existence, but he's still alive. And it's a very painful thing to look at. He's bleeding.
Of course.
And I know immediately what I have to do. It's like Old Yeller, and I'm Travis. I've got to somehow put this beloved pet down. I'm walking up to my wife, and I'm telling her, "It's Tony, sweetheart." And she starts crying. About that time, I see the sheriff coming around the corner, and he's about a block and a half away. Suddenly, euthanizing Tony is dropped 2 levels on my list of priorities, because going to jail tonight is going to be right up there.
You're in a car, you have a handgun in your waistband, even though it's really a pellet gun.
Even though it's a pellet gun, it looks exactly like a real gun. So, to my credit, I was able to pull off a very nonchalant stroll over to my car, because I know presentation is everything. If I would have acted in any way like I was trying to hide something, it would have been over for me. So I just acted like I was perhaps going to pick up my fanny pack or something. So I stroll over, and I take my gun, and I put it in the back seat of the car. I walk back to my wife just as the cop pulls up and puts the spotlight on us. And he's very serious. It's not like he just saw us there. He's obviously there because someone called in with screaming murderous threats that I was screaming out the window. And my wife she doesn't care, because she's crying for poor little Tony.
Of course.
So, and he asked for my ID, and he's asking me why I'm out there. And I'm trying my best to explain it to him, knowing that at this moment, Tony is, the last of his life is slowly draining away. So I explained to the officer why I'm there. I asked him to shine his spotlight in this field. He does that. He realizes we're not trying to rob houses or murder anyone. And my wife asked him, "Would you please kill our cat for us? Could you use your service revolver or your stick?"
And do the right thing.
And do the right thing.
Put this thing out of its misery.
And he immediately recoiled with, "Oh, no, I cannot do that. That would be animal cruelty." But then he said...
really?
He said the one thing...
The cat is really, needs to be put down.
He really does. He says the one thing that I was hoping he was going to say. He said, "But I tell you what I can do. I can leave right now, and you can do what you need to do." And I was very grateful for that. The cop drove away, and now I'm faced with the awful force of what I have to do now. I'm thinking I need something to do this with. The pellet gun that I had was an air rifle, and it would have just injured him. It wouldn't have killed him. So I'm thinking, what could I have in my car? And I happen to have a camping shovel, one of the ones that you put together, a little teeny portable camping shovel. You screw the handle in.
Very useful. We've all seen it.
It's about maybe 1.5 feet long, and I'm thinking
camping days. Right.
I can use this. It even has a serrated edge. I can use this to euthanize the cat and then to bury him. And hopefully I'll have, the heart to do it, because I already knew it would be really difficult for me. And by this time I'm getting pretty welled up emotionally. My wife is still crying, but I told her to stay. This time she would not stay. I told her, please stay here, but she said, no, I'm going with you. So we walked back out in the field, and poor Tony is still in the throes of agony, not quite dead. And she wants to save him. I'm going, sweetheart, look at him. We can't save him. So we both said our goodbyes to Tony. We both petted him and said, even though he wasn't my favorite cat, you can't see an animal in that condition and not have your heart go out to it. So
you didn't spend too much time saying goodbye.
No, because he's dying.
He needs to be. He needs to be.
She pet him real quickly, and I pet him real quickly, and then I insisted, go back to the car. You cannot be here. And to tell you the truth, at this point, I'm crying too. I'm not too much of a man to say I felt very emotional, and I did not want to do what I knew I had to do. So I'm thinking that the more quickly I do this, the better. I take my camp shovel, which I was very proud to have, and I'm thinking if with one fell stroke I could do the right thing.
Mighty manly to have a multi-tool in the trunk, right? So
I steal my mind. I silently ask him to forgive me, and I bring the shovel down as hard as I can, and thinking that's the end of it. And I don't know if you've seen the Three Stooges. Just about every time Curly's hitting the head with any sort of a hand tool, it pretty much is a bent-up piece of aluminum foil.
It becomes a silhouette of his forehead and bridge of his nose.
It conforms to the shape. And I don't know if I bought the most cheaply made shovel in the history of shovels, but that's exactly what happened. And I looked at that, and
a limp cat bent the shovel.
A limp cat bent the shovel. And I looked down, and to my horror, Tony's not dead. But now I realized for a split second, an agonizing second, that I've made things worse. So that's when I snapped. That's when my banjo string goes, doink!
I've taken too much. I can't even be a dad, but I can't handle it.
Right. So something just snapped in me, and I used this shovel as a blunt force trauma instrument. And I'm just screaming.
Go easy.
Okay, I'm screaming. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
God, dude.
And at this point, T must have run up behind me. She put her hands on my shoulder. She said, "That's enough. Just stop. That's enough." And at that point, thankfully, Tony had expired, and we're both just bawling our eyes out. So we wrapped Tony up in my jacket. And we can't dig a proper grave for him.
Your leather jacket?
No, dude. I love Tony, but don't be crazy, man. So I wrap him up in my jacket, and we can't use the shovel, so we use our hands to dig a shallow little grave. We bury him, and we put a tire on top of it because I don't want the coyotes to come back. And I realize, unfortunately, this horrible event is not over yet, because a very painful aspect still to come. I have to go and tell my poor daughter about Tony. And luckily, T was thinking ahead enough to say, you don't have to say that you bludgeoned poor Tony to death. You could say that the coyotes, and it would be true. We drive back into our apartment complex. We sit there for a moment and collect our thoughts, and I'm thinking, all right, we can't put this off any longer. Let's go and do it. So I opened the door, and what I expected was there. There's my daughter standing right inside the door with big tear-rimmed eyes, and asking me, what happened, Daddy? What happened? So at that point, I had already been through so much, I knew, just get this over, just do it. So my wife and I went and sat on the couch, and we sat her down in front of us. Yeah. And I'm ready to say the words that are going to break her heart. And I'm ready to deliver this crushing news about poor Tony. And as I look over her right shoulder, crawling under our kitchen table, there's Tony! First, my thirst was, he came back from the grave. And
how much goes through your mind in a microsecond there? First, your blood turns cold. then what the cold blood drains down below your neck.
And then, the startling reality finally comes upon me that I pinwheeled someone else's cat to death with the blessings of the police. It was someone else's cat.
That looked just like Tony?
That looked just like, and this mangled state had added to the subterfuge, so I didn't really recognize him. But all of it once, I told him, nothing's wrong, sweetheart, nothing's right. I'm dancing.
You're crying, sweating, half drunk.
He's fine, it's fine. We were just dancing, we're hugging each other, and Paxi didn't know what's going on. And so even though doing what I did was difficult, losing, the member of your pet family was not included in that whole scenario.
Of course not. It's like the obituaries. If it's not yours, it doesn't feel as bad.
The strange thing is now I love Tony. Tony's one of my favorite cats because I thought I killed him. Now we have a special relationship. I'm like petting him and lavishing all this attention on him.
Still.
So I was like, man, Brad has changed, brother. You see, Brad treats me nice now. He's changed. He's a changed man. And he loves me. He changed like that. He's nice to me now.